In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the Openscales OSD file format in about 15 different ways to collect data through from paper administration to the Openscales runner to converting to maybe 10 different survey systems, one of which you're probably likely to have access to or use. So the OSD format is designed to be able to express all of the important things that a scale developer wants to include, including instructions, including text, the scale, translations, scoring, and things like that, subscales. And a lot of survey platforms don't incorporate all of those features or some of them, and so if you convert it to a different format, you may have to end up doing analysis yourself or using just one of the available languages or something like that. But overall, it is sort of a base format that can be converted into many different systems and to import into a lot of different studies. So I'm going to be using the same scale, the PHQ-9 Patient Health Questionnaire. It's very simple. It's 9 items and it doesn't have any fancy scoring, so that we can easily convert it. And this will convert easily to many different formats. The more complicated the scale, there might be problems that you have to hand edit once you import it, especially if there's things like VAS or visual analog scale or complicated item reversals or scoring. So you have to be careful if you go into a different system. But the very first way you might want to use it is just to look at what the items are. And if you go to the scale page on Openscales, you can scroll down, you can see all the items. If any of these are reversed, there'll be a little R here on any of the subscales. It also tells you what the anchors are and the item head, what we call the item head, or the instructions that are given for each one. Sometimes you want to look at what it looks like not in English, or make a paper and pencil version of these. And I've selected ES for Spanish. So if you select printable version, it will create this rendered version, which you could print or save to a PDF or download to HTML. You could copy it, download to HTML. You should be able to open up in a word processor. But you can see this is a reasonably good format, and you could easily take this and edit it however you want for any scale, any language you have. But the online Openscales site includes a runner, so you can see what it's going to look like and importantly what the data will look like. So I'll change this back to English, and this is a JavaScript system. So all of this runs on the user's computer. There's no server access. It downloads it has access to a JavaScript runner, some web and CSS, and then the OSD file. It combines those to build this runner, and then it saves it locally to the user's browser at the end. So we'll just go through these. All of the Openscales runners generally do one question at a time unless you set it up to do some type of grid. So at the end, it allows you to download the reports or a trial-by-trial data. So if we look at the data, you can confirm what it's going to look like. It gives you all the items, all the responses, and the time for each response. An overall timestamp and their subject code. You can also download a human readable report, and this actually does some scoring. It says your depression severity is moderately severe. because that's embedded within the OSD file and the runner knows how to do that calculation. It'll show you this, so all of these are positively coded, but if there's multiple subscales, the subscales will be translated from their response to the subscale. Some of these will be filled in, or if it's reversed, maybe a 3 will turn into a 1, and things like that. So, so this is the this is the Openscales method for running, and it says demo mode responses are not saved or uploaded. But in fact, you could use this to run a study, a small study, if you wanted to. You know, if you're doing it on your own computers, or you could send people this link and have them run it and then download the report and email it to you. So all that's feasible within the Openscales. You don't need a login or anything. It's a little clumsy though. You can also use the this JavaScript scale runner on your own servers. And if we go to the Openscales site, under tools, there's a study builder, and the study builder page lets you combine multiple OSD files into a single, it's called an OSC file, that runs a series of these. You can do things like consent, messages, branches, simple branching, redirecting maybe to Sona or something to collect a response, to be able to give them credit for participating. And if you set all of this up, you could build a server package and host this yourself. I won't go into detail on that, but something like a cPanel server or a Linux server is all you need to run this yourself. There's a video on this page on how to do that. And so you can use the same scale runner that we use on Openscales, and it's all free to use. But it takes a little bit of setup and to do this, to run this yourself. So most people who run survey, questionnaire, personality studies use some type of third-party platform, and there's a lot of different popular platforms to use. And within the Openscale page, when you look at a page, there are you can download the OSD, which is the raw data form. You could edit it online and change things before you downloaded it. You can also convert it to any one of these formats. And I'm going to show you how to use the OSD in different systems, and also demonstrate all of these, almost all of these different formats. I have, so if you download the OSD, it'll just show up there, or each of these will create a slightly different format. Sometimes it's a single file, sometimes it's a zip archive. So so I have downloaded them all onto my computer already, so I don't have to mess with that. So these are all the different formats for this PHQ, and we'll look at each of them in turn. So to start with, we have the raw OSD format, and the Openscales OSD format was originally designed to help bring survey tests into the psychology experiment building language, or PEBL, which is another system I've developed. And this is a free system that runs on your desktop or on the web. So to use it in the desktop system, all you need to do is, once you install the PEBL launcher on your system, and run it for the first time, it creates this workspace under Documents or My Documents, somewhere like that, and where it holds your current versions of studies and also other things like saving snapshots and tutorials. There is a folder called Scales, and when you create a scale, it generates a study based on the OSD format. So all you need to do is drag the OSD file into Scales. So I'm just going to move it here. So now it's here. And now when you run the launcher, Here's the Pebble launcher, and normally a lot of what people do with this is run cognitive tests that are more complicated than scales, but there's a whole tab devoted to scales, and so if you have a set of tests, you can also incorporate specific scales. There are some built in to give you easy access, and there's some that were already created that we saw in this folder. There were 3, but it also now sees this OSD file and says there's an uninstalled OSD file. If you've opened the launcher before you drag this in, it won't detect it. You're gonna have to close the launcher and reopen it so it detects it. It only does that like once at when you first launch the launcher. So if I hit plus, now it becomes one of the tests on my list. You can see that it's moved the OSD file into its own directory, and for now it just keeps it as an OSD. But eventually, I think that if it gets promoted to a real study, it will look a little different, and it will separate the language and the definition files. It shows you all the details of the OSD file, and this is actually maybe one of the better editors for OSD, so you can edit this and save it and then distribute your modified version. Normally what you would do is add it to a study, and the study will have a chain of tests, and it will be added to the test with randomization and in the right order. But to test the PHQ, I can hit this orange button and it will run to show you what it looks like. Here, data won't be saved. And so it's the same items, but it's in this different format. Again, this Pebble scale runner does one item at a time, and it's adapted to the screen size and gives you that detail. I can look at what that data looked like. Let me see if I can find that. So I created a temporary data set, and here's similar to the online report in the JavaScript. I get all the same detail, what answers were given, how it's scored according to depression, what the interpretation is, and so on. So the OSD file also works to run within the online Pebble system. That's available at PEBLHub.online. And here there's free versions of the account you can get to test it out. If you're running a large study, there's some fees to maintain the online resources. And there's actually 3 ways you can run online through the OSD. One is you can upload an OSD file. I've done that here, and under the scale library, once you log in, that appears here, so you could add this to a study and run it. But the online version supports both the JavaScript version that we have on Openscales and the Pebble version. The Pebble version runs within a browser, though it's not a native compiled system. It's compiled to JavaScript browser via a system called Emscripten. So you can sort of sideload any scale you want, but depending on the scale you have, we don't. The Pebble Hub includes most of the scales that are available on the Openscales site directly. So I could type PHQ, and now all the different PHQs are here. So this is sort of built into the site, and I could either add the Pebble version or the JavaScript version from a sideloaded study or from one that's built into its library. So we'll add this one here. Oh, not authenticated. Log in. So I'll add The PEBL version, I have already created a study, so I'm just going to add it there. You can specify which language you want, and I'm going to do the PEBL runner from the library. And then I'll go back to the scale library and add the JavaScript runner. So now I have a chain of, within the study, I have a chain of tests, which are the two different PHQs run different ways. And let me just update this. There's a number of ways you can run. One is within a study you can run directly if you have another online system, or you could run it all through the PEBLHub. This is just in demo mode, so this isn't live yet, so I'll do a try it out so you can see what it looks like online. This is loading the PEBL runner, which compiles to the web browser. You can see it looks basically the same because it's almost exactly the same code base, and then also gives me the data so I can test it out. Or I could run the JavaScript runner, and this runs the JavaScript version we saw before. And again, since this is just in demo mode, it has this demo mode flag, and at the end it doesn't save the data, but if you were running this as a live experiment, the data would be uploaded to PEBLHub instead of available to the participant at the end. Okay, so those are some of the ways that you can directly use the OSD file, a runner on your own, a runner within Openscales, different PEBL or JavaScript runners within PEBL or on the PEBLHub. But a lot of people have their own platforms that they're comfortable using, and so I'm going to go through a lot of these. I'll start with RedCAP. RedCAP is used extensively in biomedical research to look at clinical outcomes, and it's not an open source system, but it's a free system if you have people at your institution to support it. So it's widely used, and it's managed out of Vanderbilt. I don't have access to RedCAP, but I have the format is extensively used and well enough documented that we're able to create a version of it. But the import I think it can import things in a CSV format, and so somewhere here I've got the RedCAP CSV, and so it's taken the 9 items and placed the text and other instructions and things like that to be able to import it into RedCAP. Notice that at least in this case we only have one language, so the OSD has 20 languages embedded with it, and you pick the language to create the RedCAP import. I'm pretty sure RedCAP has some multiple language facilities, but I'm not really sure how it works. So I can't show you how to import this, but if you have RedCAP, you probably can figure it out. And so that's one case. Another similar system is called is XLSForm, and this is also an Excel format that's maybe 10 or 15, been around for probably almost 15 or 20 years. And it uses a similar spreadsheet to define questions. So this actually looks quite similar to the RedCAP, but it has multiple tabs for handling different things. And there's a really large set of survey runners that use XLSForm. It can convert into an ODK format, which is then used within a lot of different systems. Maybe the most common is the free KOBOToolbox, but this is sort of, from what I understand, if you're doing social science or research or going into third world countries where you need to do survey work, but you don't have access to the internet, this is sort of the go-to tool. It can run on a phone or a tablet, and then save the data locally, and then later sync to an online system. And through the XLS to ODK path, they claim maybe there's 10 or 15 different systems online that use this. So I have I was able to get a KOBOToolbox account. So just show what that looks like. Once you log in, you get sort of a way of browsing your different survey tools. And if I go, see if I remember how to do this. If I go new, I can upload an XLSForm, or you could import it via a URL, even if you have it hosted on a GitHub or something. So I'm going to drop the PHQ XLSX here. And there's a couple things that you need to fill in. Maybe this is just because of the free version I have. And then it ingests this without any errors. If you have a very complicated scale, it may fail on some of the more esoteric features because it's going through several sort of translation layers. So if I deploy this, I can look at this, and the easiest way to see whether it works is to go to the preview. And here's the PHQ9. So most of these systems will render these as a single page. There's some that sort of go halfway between one item at a time but the page is dynamic and it updates every time you answer one. So you can answer all of these using this sort of 4-point Likert type scale, and it shows the form is valid. So the KOBOToolbox, if you're using a different system, like a tablet system, it might not look exactly like this, but this demonstrates importing into KOBOToolbox using XLSForm, and there's really a bunch of other platforms that also can use XLSForm. Next we have Qualtrics, and I have a Qualtrics account here. So what I did was I created a blank project survey, and so it doesn't have anything in it right now. And at least currently in Qualtrics, to import, you go to Tools, Import, Import Survey. I can choose the file, and let's just look briefly at the Qualtrics. So the Qualtrics has a different format that's kind of looks like a Markdown, and has a way of importing this, but it's probably not going to import the scoring. Rather, it'll have an item that tells you how to do the scoring because that's embedded within the generated within the converter. So let's import that, and this imports it as a single matrix block. So let's see, if I preview this, we can see what it will look like if you try to run it, either on the phone. The phone separates them all, but online it lets you respond in this block. So here, it imports these scoring notes because the Qualtrics is not going to do the scoring. So you probably need to go in after you import and delete this item and make sure that you save these instructions so you can do the coding yourself. Or maybe there's some ways of doing this for simple scoring like this that you could then embed. We haven't done this in Qualtrics. Maybe you know how to do that with the import, and we'd really be great to be able to automatically incorporate that in Qualtrics. Okay, so that's Qualtrics. Let's see what else we have. LimeSurvey is an open source survey tool that is, I think it used to be kind of clunky. I've seen it looks really nice now. I've been able to make the OSD conversion work both on their free online version, but I also have a hosted version on my own computer that I'll show you right now. So here's the LimeSurvey tool. And there's two ways you can import an OSD test into LimeSurvey. One is through the conversion route. So and I think any version of LimeSurvey, including the one at limesurvey.org, will do this. So I can just go to the plus import and drop the file. That's not where my file is. So the LimeSurvey file has a tab separated format. Otherwise, it's probably quite similar to all these others. So I can drop this here, import the survey. It will give me details, questions, answers. I can go to the survey and edit things if I need to. But just to see what it looks like, I'll do the preview here. It has this basic instruction. There's one question on the survey. So this renders them all as a single block, having the same sort of question head and having each of the item texts here and responses you make. Okay, did not save, but that's fairly straightforward. There's another way you can import. So some of the items don't easily convert to their text format they read. And one of them that doesn't is a VAS, or a visual analog scale. So the visual analog scale, if you want to make one, you can in LimeSurvey, but you have to take a numeric one and change how it's rendered and by hand. So LimeSurvey has a whole plugin system, and a link to the OSD plugin importer is on the LimeSurvey wiki, and it's available in the Openscales GitHub. But you're gonna have to, you need access to you need to know who's hosting your system and ask them to load the plugin. I think I was able to do this on my own computer because I can control that. I'm not sure exactly how. If you have if your university or your institution hosts a LimeSurvey, you probably can talk to them about having them load the OSD. But if you're going on like the commercial site, they may or may not be willing to put the OSD importer on there. But for some reason, it just appears up here when it's loaded. So I can go to this to import the OSD. So this will read the native OSD file. And let me drag this here. I can tell which language, or actually LimeSurvey lets you import all the languages. So you can allow users to respond in any language they want. Okay, survey was created. I can open it. And now this looks probably almost exactly the same as the other version. I'm not sure if this no answer might only work for the importer. Technically, the PHQ allows you to only respond optionally, and so the importer sees that these items are coded as optional and gives you the no answer response. But if you don't like that, you could always go in after you import and change it. Okay, so the same, basically the same import path. This same outcome from two different import paths into LimeSurvey. Okay, so I do have a QTI version, and this is basically for learning management systems to create item banks. And although I can create it and I can import it into Canvas, I've never been able to find the items, and I think it only accepts a certain types of items. So this may work if you have a multiple choice items defined in OSD that you want to then run within Canvas, but I've never succeeded, and I don't have access to any of the other systems. So this is possibly a system that works, but test it before you decide to rely on it. Let me do Google Forms next, because this is probably one of the most popular survey tools, because almost everyone has access to it for free. So there's no real easy way to import scales from other systems within Google. So if you look up how to do this, there's a few third-party tools you can use, but a lot of people want to be able to do this, but the recommendations sometimes, well, you might have to write some JavaScript code. And so that's actually what we do. So the converter, if you go to the converter, and I'll just pick a random one here and convert it, it gives you sort of instructions on how to load it within Google, and some JavaScript code that embeds all the content, and then when you run this JavaScript code, it creates a form for you. So it's not like a real import, it's a program that you run to generate a Google form that you could then modify and edit. So there's a couple ways of doing this. The instructions tell you to build a form first, but you don't actually need to build a form first. But I'll just show you how to do it in the blank form. So if you have a form, the questionnaire you embed is not going to be in this form at all. It's going to be a new one, so you don't need to go this way, but you can, let's see, you go to the ... menu and go to the app script, which opens up this dialog. You can also get to this dialog just from Google Drive, New, and you go to More, and then you can say Google App Script. So either one will open up this page. We can close this right now. We'll open up, no, I can't find it. Well, I must have closed it, so let me just do it again. I'm going to open up a Google Apps script. And this will open up sort of this code window. You're going to delete whatever's in there, and then open up your Google Forms.js, which is Google script, or it's basically a version of JavaScript. This gives you the instructions for doing this, so you don't even need that. I'm going to copy that, paste it here, and you can see it sort of gives me the data that it's going to go through and generate the items. So now if I save it and then I run this, okay, let's do authorization. Okay, so it executes it. It gives me the URL that the edit is saved at, but you can always go back here and it will be saved in one of these places. It's probably this. I'm not sure if it's this one or not. Oh, this is the blank one I created. So it should be saved in your somewhere, probably in the base Google Drive. So if I follow that URL here, if I follow this URL, this page is going to be hard to find after you run it. So copy this and open it up here. This shows me the scale, and again, it just embeds the scoring stuff here, and you might want to edit that. But if we want to see what it will look like, so I think that I'm not sure how we handle some of the the VAS scale in Google Form, but so there might be other things you have to adapt or edit depending on what scale you have. But this is an easy way of taking one of the scales and importing it into a new form, and then you can always copy items from one form to another in Google. So there's ways of importing this into separate scales and then merging them together at the end. Okay, so that does Google Forms. Now there's a few, I guess surveyJS is maybe the next most popular. SurveyjS is a widely used JavaScript library for generating surveys, and it's used apparently in a lot of corporate settings if you need to do usability assessments and custom surveys and things like that. It has ways of embedding into WordPress and all types of other systems like React. It's also within the psychology testing frameworks, apparently used for PsyCoPy and Pavlovia. I don't have access to those systems, and so I haven't tested it. But since surveyJS is so broadly used, I was able to create a little tester. So this is available in the Openscales repository, Openscales tools surveyJS test, that will load the converted file. So I've got the surveyJS file, which is a JSON format. Let's see. Well, I did have this working. Okay. So now it has instructions, the same instructions we see a lot of other places. This bank of responses. The rendering for this one is a little weird because item 9 on this scale is technically optional, so for some reason this conversion doesn't include it in the same bank. Also, this one doesn't handle the rendering that we have embedded in some of these, some simple HTML like markdown or markup. So this is just a demo, and then of a simple wrapper for surveyJS, and this is the code will take the responses, and this is what it would send back to your server. So I believe this should work in as a way of converting into many different online systems, including commonly used experimentation software like Pavlovia and PsyCoPy. Okay, so now there's a few, I guess the next system to look at is PsyToolkit. So PsyToolkit is a sort of website that offers ways of using sort of a event-based programming language to do different study designs, and they have sort of their own internal format for representing surveys. So we can convert to this. So to do this, you have to get an account. These are generally for academic and non-commercial use. And you can create a new survey. So they have, well, I've already apparently copied this in already. So if you open up the text for PHQ9 that's converted, I don't think this has a way of reading the file, so you have to open up the file and copy it and paste it in here, and that's what I've done already. So we can save it, and then you need to test it, you need to compile it, and once it's compiled, there's all types of other features here like instructions and IRB and connecting to a experiment running system to give credit, but I can just test in a new lab. So test in a new tab, click this button to start, and this one gives not kind of hybrid between one at a time and a whole grid that we see in some of the others. So okay, this has so something's wrong here. I think that PsyToolkit can do calculations, but it might be that it's hard to do the conversion to their system. So in order to do this, you might need to add some new calculation items or something. But so that's PsyToolkit. And the last two we have are sort of both relatively new survey systems, open source survey systems that have sort of different audiences and different goals. There's Surveydown, which has been around a few years and is an effort to build a comprehensive survey tool within R, Shiny, and R Markdown and Quarto. So it requires a number of files to run, and our converter, so I think it's feasible to make a Surveydown reader that takes the OSD directly, but what we do is take the OSD and convert it into a complete Surveydown package, and it's going to be this zip file here. So this will run within RStudio, posits RStudio. So I've loaded it, just the app.r, and just to test it, I can run this Shiny app, and it will render each item, and if you do it locally, it saves it to a text file and also makes sure that you can only respond once. Of course, you probably are hosting this on your own server, and I really don't know how, I haven't figured out how all that works because I don't use this, but there's plenty of great documentation at the Surveydown GitHub and websites. So finally, there's Repronim Reproschema. So Repro is for reproducibility, and this is a kind of a large project trying to improve reproducibility across psychology and neuroscience, and they have systems for doing handling, saving data from neuroimaging and things like that in a systematic way, so that you know exactly the conditions under which data were created. And the idea for the Reproschema is that you can host versions of your survey tool or your clinical outcome tool, and if you change it, you can use GitHub to track those changes, so you know exactly which version data was collected under. So similarly, we create a Reproschema archive to run, and it generates this zip file. And the Reproschema, it's actually not too different than the OSD format. It has a lot of the same properties. They're both JSON formats, but the Reproschema saves these all in across multiple files where you have individual things defined. So so you can't easily exchange these, but really if you look at it, it doesn't look too different than the OSD format, which makes it really easy to generate a Reproschema. So I've uploaded this to the Openscales website. Let me see if I can find. It's up here somewhere. Here we go. So you'd probably be hosting your own survey repro server, but they have an open one to be able to test it, and I direct it to my Openscales archive for this, and this is what it looks like when you run it. Let's see. And here you can, I guess you can't go to new items until you answer one, but this also has this sort of dynamic thing. I can answer all of these. And this is usually embedded within a number of other activities, so I'm not sure how to set all of that up, but this will create the Reproschema archive that you can then use within the Repronim runner. Okay, so that is all different formats. I think we went through about 12 or 15 different ways of using the OSD, converting it to many other common systems. And for the most part, simple scales should convert easily. Only the JavaScript and PEBL versions will support all of the features of the OSD, including random arms and scoring. Not all of these survey systems support that at all. And then it's also, some of them support it but don't allow you to import it. You have to hand edit it. So this gives you an avenue for taking a scale, putting it into the system you want, and then editing it so that it looks good. So make sure you don't use these without confirming that they're working right. This gives you a walkthrough for all the different formats, and there should be a timeline that gives you a way of jumping to each one of these within the video. All right, thank you.